Okay, let's get part two going of the contours tool that we previously saw in part one. Um, Before we get too deep into it, I want to share a few things with you, basically on the setting up and use of models and the tools that load up in the processing toolbox. The way that's done, excuse me, is if you go under settings here and under options, the files are saved to this directory identified here under processing and models. And by default, it always writes in here your user profile, for when you log in. However, I've added a new directory in here that it reads from, mainly because I keep all this information on an external hard drive. So that way I can move it to a laptop or different computers that have that information on it, and then have a setup file with this information in it. So it makes it easier. So what happens is the files are saved there, and they're just, let me show you what they are. Because here's that directory on my shared drive. And for the most part, if I open that up, let's see if it lets me open it up. Open with, here we go. Open with Notepad. Basically, it's just a text file with references on it. So these names, whatever you name them, is not necessarily important with how they show in this toolbar. And what I mean by that is, here's what's important when you're naming them for how they show up in the toolbar. The name and then the group. Because most of those have to be filled in. So you have to have a group and you have to have a name. But what's interesting is, like earlier when I had two contour files with different names in the directory, like this and this, these are both contours. If they have the same name, only the last one that's read, from those directories is the only one that shows up. So what that means is the name you give it here has to be unique. Consequently, you see contours too, because when they were the same name, it only loaded the last one. It didn't matter what the group was. It didn't matter if it was the same or different group. If it was the same name, it only loaded the last one. Or basically, to be probably more correct, it loaded the previous one and then loaded the last one, which negated the previous one. But anyway, so to make it work, I had to say contours too. Another thing on part one, one of the things when I was preparing for this, one of the things I always wanted to do was load a style when I executed it, because it makes it look like that it would do that. Like here it says, edit rendering styles for outputs. Now this is the newest one, and back when I did the model, it was actually whatever version it was. This version I'm using here right now is, let's see if I can figure out where the version is here. This is a long-term version, Madeira. That's what I'm using right now. So that everything that's working here now works in this version. But previously, for whatever reason, it didn't work. It could have been user error too, because I thought, well, it ought to be pretty simple. But let me show you something that happened. Let me show you this little step I added to this, even since I did part one. What I was doing is looking for ways to add the styles. So without even realizing that it was available, I just typed in style up here under algorithms, and that basically searches all the tools. And look what I found. Set style for raster, set style for vector. So I put that in the tool. Let me show you real quick how cool that is and how cool that works, at least on this one. So let's say there's an area I'm working on and I want to do this tool. I just select the DEM, select the small extent area that I want, I'm just going to keep it contour interval 10, which in this case is 10 foot because of my raster is in feet. And I'm going to run this. And watch how nice this is. Watch how nice it works. There it is. And this is the style that I made that I want to, I use as basically a base. It has a little bit of transparency. It labels the lines so they'll be useful to me. And man, that functionality is just so nice. So what we're going to do is show how this tool came about, because it's basically just a series of steps that I was doing, that was useful to me. And I was able to put them into these tools. So let's do that right now. So the way this works, and the ways these two tools work, I've already set this up so it has the name and the group, so it loads up. But like I showed you before, you search for tools. So if you're using the command, up here, and you can even do the same search here, but if you're using the command on raster and you want to find out what it is over here in the tools, you just say clip raster by extent. So in this case, we're looking for clip. Okay, so let's do that. Clip. Well, here's the tools, and these are the same tools that you use in the models. I'm going to take this off. So let's do that. Open this up, edit the model, go to the algorithms here, do a search, clip. Clip raster by extent. Let's put that in here. So what happens when you drop that in there? It asks for input. So you want to have your input ready. In this case, it's, oh, well, you know what? I want to be able to select it. So let me show you this. We can't start with clip extent. We have to start with an input. So in this case, it's going to be a raster layer right here. Pop it right in there. And I want to just call it DEM. Select mandatory. So there we go. That's our first step. So now let's go back to the algorithms and pull in the clip. Clip raster by extent. I'll pop that in there. And look how nice this is. It already knows. It knows that that's the input for this DEM. And let's see what this says. Extent of DEM. So that's not even right, because I want to be able to select it. So it says an error too on that one. That means it's looking for more input. So what do I want to do on the extent? So let's say, oh, look here. There's one for extent. Now this is the stuff that I think is so cool in this tool, because these little parameters make it so interactive, and you just have to look to see what's available. You have to get in here and get familiar with these parameters and then your available algorithms, because there's all kinds of combinations. And speaking of that, I tried different. I mean, when we get to that point, I tried different tools, because sometimes if I was to type in extract or whatever tool I was looking for, there's multiple ones. Well, in a lot of cases, I tried them and they didn't actually work with these inside this process modeler. So, but at the same time, I found one that did. So that was still pretty cool. But anyway, let's get back to the algorithms, and now let's pull in clip raster extent, because the process I'm going to be doing, I've already done it manually. All I want is a little area to show topo on, or contour lines. So I'm going to extract that little area and only make contours on that little area, and then load those contours up. So that's the process. So now look what happens on here. Let's see. Let me go back to this extent and open it up. Extent mandatory. Clip raster by extent. The DM shows up, and this says up extent. So that's my extent. That's this one here. I'll show it to you because we'll put 2 just to show that it's the one I put on there. So when I put this back on there, clip raster by extent, the selection is there, extent 2. Assign a specific no data value, and we don't need that. And then here we go. Now that, I mean, in its crudest form, that's already a tool. It'll already work. I mean, I can go out here and execute it, paste the interactive or select the interactive clip and place the square, and it's going to do output. So let me show you. Let's just do it. I'm going to save it. Model was saved. Let's make it go. Here we go. YouTube, contours. There it is. It automatically load clip because that's the only one. And down here in extent, all you have to do is select it. Select it on the canvas. There it goes. We'll make it run. So all that's going to do is put the... Uh-oh, what happened? Let's see. Let me refresh my display. Well, it didn't work. I didn't save anything. Well, let's go fix it. Okay. And I have to tell you that it is a lot of trial and error. So let's name this. Okay. Temporary contours. I'll just put temp C. So let's save that. There we go. We got our output now. We'll save that. Let's run it again. Clip extent. Select on canvas. There we go. Temp C. It's gonna work this time. There we go. Now it's there. Just a little piece. That's all I want. It's just a little piece. Okay, so let's go. We know that piece works now. It's how we did it. We tested it. So let's go back into that tool. I mean, I'm telling you, this is fun stuff. So now that we've done clip extent, what's next? We want to take that extent and clip raster and do contours. So let's look that up. CONTOURS. Okay, I'm going to save us some time here because I've used most of these, and I had to try. I think it was this one, and there was a. Oh, let me see. Let me take that off. Take the S off. There we go. So I think I end up using the GDAL, and if my memory's correct, I used the raster from the grass, and there was some oddity there I didn't like. So you know what? Try them out. So I'm going to go ahead and pull these contours over in here, and it's the same way. All up there. It already knows that my input. Let me see. So I'm not taking my DEM. What I want to take is the clipped extent output. So let me say okay with that. And let me go back in here, and I'm gonna take this out because I don't really want to save that. I want it to go as input into this next step where we're doing contours. So then I'm going to open that up again. Inputs coming from the previous step. We got a contour interval here, elevation, and so forth. Well, now, you know, if I have it just like this, I'm going to save this and run it and show you. So let's run it. And it shows extent, but it doesn't let me put in a value there. It doesn't let me put in, you know, well, I don't want the default is 10 that you saw, but I want maybe 3 or 4. So by default, that option is not available. That's not available on, you know, when we run it, unless we make a what? A variable, an input. So what do we need to do it? Basically just a number, and that number is the interval. So then we want the default to be 10. I think 10's good. I mean, let's keep it. But this time we want it as input into here. So when we go back into here, we have to select this and say, we want it to come from the model. And there it is. And it's already set. It's found interval. And that's how you do this on, if there was values that you wanted to set inside the tool other than using the default. Now look at all these other names. Elevation, offset 0. I don't think there's anything else needed. It goes in an input. Let's make it so we can see it. And then let's, I'm going to save that again. Well, we'll just call it 10 because it doesn't need to be anything else. And then we're going to save it. And then we're going to run it. There it is. So here we have, in a short amount of time, created this awesome tool that consolidates a few processes and really saves us time. And then the second and the last thing, I mean, this is pretty much done. The only thing left to do is we have to add the style that we want. So let's do that. We'll go back into our algorithms and search for style. Set style for vector layer. All right, let's put that on there. Let's take this off first. We'll get rid of that. Set style for vector layer. Use input. Vector layer is the algorithm of contours. The style file, where we're going to find that at? Well, that's, for me, that's back over on my Z drive and FPMS. Where did I put those? Graph, style, contours. There we go. And then on that, this is where, well, I guess we still have to, where do we save our output at? I guess we still put it here. So let's put this on here. CONTOURS2. I think that's going to work. So let's save it and run it. Let's see what happens. DM, extent. Oh, okay, there. Select. I don't know what's doing wrong. Doing something weird. What are we doing wrong? Let's do this. I'm going to save this. Close it. Okay, so here we are back at contours. Let's execute it. DEM, extent, select on canvas. It doesn't have to be shown. I'll just select it right here. Keep the 10-foot interval, contours, and run it. Let's see how we did. Oh, it might have worked. It might have worked that time. Did it load the style? Yes. And there we go. We have a tool. And I spent a little time setting the values on the style. Took a little time of trial and error to go through that, at least the first time if you haven't used it. But man, I have to tell you, it's well worth it. Let's load up some aerial photography and take a look at this. Google satellite. There we go. And I think it's awesome. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe we'll go through the basin tool next time, because it has a few other cool things I think I want to show you. Anyway, that's all I have for now. Enjoy.